Story 1. Home alone, the whispers in the walls. The rain had been relentless for days, a relentless downpour that seemed to wash away all sense of warmth and comfort. Amy, a young woman in her mid-20s, found herself alone in her old, creaky Victorian home on the outskirts of a small, isolated town. The storm had knocked out the power, leaving her in a house that seemed even more imposing in the dim, flickering candlelight. Her parents had gone on a trip, leaving her in charge of the house. It was supposed to be a peaceful week alone, but the storm had trapped her there. The sound of the wind whistling through the trees and the constant pattering of raindrops on the windows had her on edge. She decided to retreat to her bedroom and try to get some sleep. The darkness and the sound of the rain should have been soothing, but it wasn't. She could have sworn she heard whispers in the walls, faint, indistinct voices that sent shivers down her spine. She dismissed them as a product of her imagination and exhaustion, but the unease lingered. Lying in bed, she couldn't escape the feeling that she was being watched. The shadows on her bedroom walls danced with every flicker of the candle, and she began to imagine sinister figures lurking in the corners. Sleep eluded her, and her heartbeat quickened. In the darkest hours of the night, the whispers grew louder, more coherent. "Amy, we're here," they hissed. "Alone, alone, alone." Terrified, she pulled the covers tight around her, wondering if this was some kind of malevolent presence that had come with the storm. She tried to call her parents, but her phone was dead, and there was no way to contact the outside world. The whispers intensified, echoing through the house. As dawn broke, she gathered the courage to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, she crept through the darkened halls, searching for the source of the haunting whispers. She finally came to a room she'd never paid much attention to, a hidden, forgotten chamber behind a bookshelf. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty, neglected space. In the center of the room was a long-forgotten doll, sitting atop an old, creaky rocking chair. The doll's eyes seemed to follow her as she approached. It was the source of the whispers, but the doll's voice was unmistakably that of her grandmother, who had passed away years ago. "Amy, we're here," the doll murmured, and its eyes blinked slowly. "Alone, alone, alone." The doll contained the spirit of her deceased grandmother, and it was trying to comfort her in the most sinister way. She couldn't bear to leave her grandmother trapped in such a twisted form. Trembling, Amy lit a match and set the doll ablaze, ending the haunting whispers and releasing her grandmother's spirit. As the doll burned to ashes, the storm outside began to subside, and the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. Amy felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow, as if her grandmother had been trying to protect her all along. But the eerie events of that night would stay with her forever, a bone-chilling reminder of the dark secrets that can hide in the corners of one's own home. Story 2. Home Alone, the Mirror's Malevolence. Daniel had always been skeptical of the supernatural, dismissing ghost stories and urban legends as nothing more than tales to entertain children around campfires. But one night, when he found himself alone in his inherited ancestral home, he would come to question his beliefs in the most terrifying way. The house had been in his family for generations, a grand mansion with elaborate, ornate mirrors adorning the walls. It was an imposing structure, filled with echoes of the past. His parents had gone on a last-minute trip, leaving him alone for the week. The first night alone was uneventful, but the second night brought an eerie chill. As Daniel wandered the dimly lit hallways, he noticed something strange about the mirrors. His reflection seemed to move independently, beckoning him with an unsettling grin. He dismissed it as a trick of his imagination, but the unease grew. On the third night, the mirrors came alive with a malevolent intent. Daniel awoke to see his reflection writhing in agony, its eyes pleading for help. He tried to move away, but the reflection held him in place. Then, it spoke in a voice that was not quite his own. "Daniel, you're not alone," it whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Terrified, Daniel turned and fled down the hallway, but the mirrors seemed to multiply, each reflecting his fear and torment. The voices of his ancestors echoed through the mirrors, speaking in unison. "You can't escape," they chanted. "You're never alone." Desperate, Daniel smashed one of the mirrors, shattering the illusion. But it was no use. The other mirrors only grew more sinister. The house itself seemed to conspire against him, trapping him within its malevolent grasp. As the night wore on, the mirrors closed in, their reflections reaching out to drag him into their world. In his final moments, he saw his own reflection smiling back at him, its eyes filled with malevolence. It was a reflection that was not his own, but a malevolent force that had taken control. The following night, when his parents returned, they found the house in disarray, and Daniel was nowhere to be found. Only the shattered mirrors bore witness to the horrors he had faced. His family home was forever tainted, and the legends of its haunted mirrors would endure, a bone-chilling tale for generations to come. Story 3. Home Alone, the Uninvited Guest. Hannah's weekend getaway to a cozy cabin nestled in the woods promised solitude and serenity. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness descended upon the isolated retreat, she would come to realize that she was not as alone as she had thought. The cabin was a charming rustic retreat miles away from the nearest neighbor. With no cell service or internet, it was a digital detox that Hannah had desperately needed. The first evening was peaceful, with the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant hooting of an owl providing the soundtrack to her solitude. However, as the night deepened, an eerie feeling crept over her. The cabin seemed to come alive with strange, otherworldly sounds. Footsteps echoed in the distance, and the floorboards creaked as if someone was moving about the cabin. She dismissed it as the product of her imagination and her unease of being alone in the woods. But then, a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway of her bedroom. It was a tall, gaunt man, his eyes dark and hollow, his face twisted in a malevolent grin. Hannah screamed and scrambled for the door, but the man was upon her in an instant, his cold, bony hands closing around her throat. "Welcome, my home," he hissed, and his grip tightened. Hannah fought for her life, clawing at the ghost, but he was impossibly strong. Within few seconds, Hannah's breath broke out, and she was no more, leaving the secrets of the house to be exposed to the people. Ghostly man would forever live in the house alone, leaving impossible for the strangers